So today we're going to be talking about wheelchairs and other assistive devices. We'll just be going over the main, the basic main ones that are out there. Not an extensive list of assistive devices because there's a lot out there, but we'll go through the main ones, and then we'll talk about gait, which is ambulation and walking, and we'll talk about that for a little while. So let me pull up my PowerPoint. Okay, here we go. Okay, wheelchairs and assistive devices and gait training. So after we talk about devices, we'll switch to gait training. And remember, if you have any questions about anything along the way, just chime in. That's how I like the class to go. So these are three different types of wheelchairs. Now, these are very, very basic types of wheelchairs. These are not, and I would tell you in terms of quality of what it can do for the patient, these are not very good wheelchairs at all, but they do have a place and a purpose. So let's go through what these different wheelchairs are. So let's start over here with the red one over here on the left-hand side of your screen. Now this one does have a good purpose. This one is called a transport wheelchair. It's very, very, very lightweight, and you can see it has 4 small wheels on it. So a person is not going to be able to propel themselves in this chair. This chair is just meant to be able for people that it's very, very lightweight and it folds up. And this is just made for people to like be able to get their loved ones to and from doctor's appointments or to and from the pharmacy or to and from church very, very easily, so they don't have to pick up a big heavy wheelchair. This usually weighs less than 20 pounds once it's all folded up and everything. And then you transfer out of the car or out of where you are. And this just makes it easier to get in and out of places if it's a person that's non-ambulatory and if they can't leave home a lot. The one in the middle is probably a wheelchair that you're most familiar seeing. This is just a folding frame, standard sling back type wheelchair. So it's heavy duty, meaning it usually can hold about 250 pounds or so. It folds up so it can be stored or put in a trunk, but it's very heavy. And you can see it has large wheels in the back so the patient can propel, but it's got a sling back and a sling seat made out of like leather or vinyl, so it doesn't really give a lot of postural support. And then the one over here on the black one over here on the right side of your screen is a power chair. Now this is a very basic power chair, which I'm going to show you some pictures of some other power chairs in a minute that are a lot more high tech than this. But basically a power chair is used when a person is still independent in their life and cognitively they're good, but they're too weak to propel a manual wheelchair with their arms. Or maybe their trunk is so weak that if they tried to propel the chair, they would just fall over. So a power chair is much more functional for them so they can still participate in daily life. And so we'll see and power chairs, this is a basic power chair, and power chairs are very expensive. I mean, this basic power chair might run you about $15,000, but I've had clients that get their chairs and they end up being like 50,000, 75,000, and that's a lot of them. So they really can run, once you start getting bells and whistles on them, they really do get expensive. But more on that later. Okay, so purposes of a wheelchair, I don't think I really have to tell you this. Besides allowing for mobility if you're not able to walk, it does provide support, postural support. So sometimes you might see somebody with a certain specialized backrest or a certain lateral component on the chair, which maybe comes out and supports their trunk, so they can stay sitting upright and still function in their everyday activities. And we'll see pictures of those in just a minute. Okay, so when somebody comes in when somebody is getting evaluated for a wheelchair, it's usually done between a PT or an OT and an equipment vendor. And usually the equipment vendor has gone through certain training, and they have a designation behind their name, which is ATP, and it stands for Assistive Technology Professional. So sometimes those people are therapists also, and then they're also assistive technology professionals, and they just work as vendors selling chairs after they practiced a while, but they don't have to be a therapist. But you have to have a therapist there, at least one therapist. You do all these, and these are all the things that you look at and evaluate, just like you would for anybody. But then you've got to get certain measurements for a patient. And these are going to be the same whether you're getting a manual chair or a power chair. Okay, so you got to get the seat depth. So you got to get their thigh length. You got to get their leg length. So you know how high their seat needs to be off the floor, or how high the wheelchair is. You need to know how the distance from the seat to the scapula, because that'll be how high your backrest needs to go. You need to measure for your armrest, and you need to measure for the width of the seat too. So whenever somebody is getting a wheelchair, if they're going to be a wheelchair user for the majority of their mobility, they need a customized chair. They're not going to be using these little off-the-shelf chairs that I just showed you. People that are wheelchair users primarily for their mobility are going to have custom chairs. So that's why we're measuring all of these things, to get their chair custom just for them. Okay. Now, these are other things to consider when considering a custom chair. Are they going to be using it primarily at home and for work? Is it going to be a sports chair, which is a totally different world, which I'll show you some sports chairs in a minute? Is it going to be mostly for a kid at school? Do they need do they need a chair to transport the wheelchair from point A to point B to make it easier for an elderly couple to get each other into their doctor's appointments? Or do they need a certain chair to function, but their funding is not going to pay for all of it, so we have to compromise on some of the bells and whistles? So some things we have to consider. Other positioning is a big concern with wheelchair use too. Prevention of pressure ulcers. So think about it. Whenever we're sitting, and just in the course of the hour and a half we're going to be in this class together, you're probably all sitting or standing up or sitting on a stool or a chair. And in the course of our lecture, you're going to be moving around, and you're not going to sit in one place for the whole time, or you would start to get sore. If I sat in my chair right now, where I'm sitting for this whole lecture, my ischial tuberosities and my coccyx would be so sore, and probably have like stage 1 pressure ulcers. So we're always moving around. Well, most people in wheelchairs can't do that. So they have to have certain specialized cushions to help them prevent pressure sores if they can't do pressure reliefs. Normalization of tone, that's just if they have a neurological disorder and they have hyperflexive reflexes, or sometimes involuntary movements. You can get certain things on the chair that can help normalize those involuntary movements just by the way it's positioned. Optimization of respiratory function just means making sure the person is sitting with their chest fully upright, and if they're leaning forward, then we need to get something to pull their shoulders back. So sometimes you'll see people that have straps sitting in a wheelchair, and they'll have straps across their shoulders and those straps are pulling them back to help stretch their chest and help them have a better so they can expand their rib cage better so they can breathe better.
Mr.
And then
Allen,
yes.
so like 20 years ago, we used to take bed sheets and like tie people into their wheelchair, but I thought that they said now that that was considered a type of restraint.
Are you talking like around their hips or are you talking around their shoulders?
Like up underneath their armpits, the axillary, and
Did
tied
you
to
do
the,
it for like breathing reasons or did you do it for restraint reasons?
because they were sliding out of their wheelchairs.
Okay, yeah. Well, if you're doing it because they're sliding out of their wheelchairs, then it's okay because then if I mean, really, if all wheelchairs need to have a seat belt. If the wheelchair doesn't have a seat belt, it doesn't need to be in use. Even the basic wheelchairs have seat belts nowadays. So if a facility is using old wheelchairs without seat belts, then you're gonna have to use a sheet to tie them in so they don't slide out. Because if they're believe it, if you've never been around people in wheelchairs, if they don't wear a seat belt, no matter how weak or how strong they are, they're sliding all over those seats. So I wouldn't say that you would be that use Jackie would be a restraint because in that case you were doing it to keep them in their chair. So but that is true nowadays that you're not supposed to tie people into chairs, but because it is considered a restraint. A seatbelt's not considered a restraint, but if it's a positioning device or it's a sheet or like a canvas or a Velcro strap you rig up on the chair to help with their posture, if it's for postural or functional reasons, that is not considered a restraint because you're going to document why you did it, that you had a good reason for doing it. It was for a physical reason. Well, there we go. Okay, so there's a lot of different wheelchair types. We'll go through these super duper quick because they pretty much, you can read it and it's self-explanatory. A standard wheelchair is going to be that, like that middle picture of that picture of the three wheelchairs I showed y'all. That's just the basic standard wheelchair you see most hospital patients being wheeled around in, that are foldable, they're heavy, have like a leather or vinyl backrest and a sling seat. Usually holds people 200 to 250 pounds. It's just called a standard wheelchair. Heavy duty is going to be an extra wide wheelchair, and it's going to be people for over 200 pounds. Now, most of the time nowadays, we call those bariatric chairs. And those bariatric chairs, I mean, you don't really have to know. You'll know it when you see it because it will be a super wide chair, like a chair. It will be a wheelchair that looks like it's wide enough for two regular people to sit in, and it will have like big bars. It'll be super heavy duty and like looks like it can hold a lot of weight because it has to. Don't really get so caught up between the difference between a kid's wheelchair and a junior wheelchair. It really is just the size of the child that makes the difference of the size of their wheelchair. Little kids have little bitty wheelchairs. Kids go and if it's determined a kid is not going to be an ambulator, then we put them in power chairs or we put them in manual chairs by the time they're like 1.5 or 2 years old. Even if they're getting gait training and therapy, they're old enough to be mobile, and they're at that cognitive stage where they need to be mobile in their environment like their peers to develop cognitively and have those skills. So you put them you would think a kid wouldn't know how to work a wheelchair. It takes 5 minutes for a kid to learn how to propel a manual wheelchair. And a little bitty, a 5-year-old you got to give them a little time to learn how to drive a junior power chair. You got to make sure they're safe and they're not going to run into walls and they're not going to run through windows or run over the family dog. But after a while, little kids, even toddlers, kindergartners, can learn and be pros with power chairs. So you would be really surprised at what little kids do and what kids do out there. And sometimes, you even if they are getting therapy for their gait training, you're not that you're taking the gait training away from them because they're doing it for therapeutic reasons, or maybe when they once they do grow up and their body gets bigger, maybe they will walk farther, but for now, they need to be mobile in their environment now. So let's put them in a wheelchair so they can do that. An amputation wheelchair, it's not really any different than a regular wheelchair. It's just the center of gravity and the axle of the wheels is set a little differently, because if you have a leg missing or both legs missing, then your body's center of gravity is completely changed. So if you sat in a regular wheelchair, you would flip over backwards. So the axle and the whole center of and that wheels have to be moved if you have an amputation. Usually, sometimes for a single amputee, but always for a double amputee. And I'm talking about lower extremity amputees. And a hemiplegia wheelchair is going to be for somebody that has hemiplegia or a stroke. And what it is, it's lowered. The only difference is it's an adult sized wheelchair, but it's lowered really low to the ground. So it's kind of like a low rider wheelchair, but it's lowered so that they can still use their good arm and leg to propel the wheelchair on the floor. So they can use their, like, if my left arm and leg were the hemiplegic sides, then I could use my right arm to propel on the wheel, and I could use my left, and I could use my right leg, my foot, to propel myself along too. And you'll see a lot of people that have strokes. That's how. And if they're people that have strokes or brain injuries, if they end up in manual wheelchairs as their means of mobility, a lot of them use that one arm and one leg method to drive. And it's pretty functional. Now, this is a chair that is for hemiplegic people or people that only have one good upper extremity. Like they have, like of all four limbs, they may have one upper extremity that is functional and strong. And so this type of chair is called a one-arm drive wheelchair, and it's designed specifically with special. You can look. I don't know if you can see it on my screen, but you can pull it up on your PowerPoint and see. On the wheel, on one drive wheel in the back, there's two push rims. One push rim, if they grab onto it and propel, will propel both big wheels in the same direction. If they grab onto the other push rim, it will only move the wheel on that side. So that will be how they turn. So this is if a person was a spinal cord injury and had only the use of one arm, or say it was, and you'll see these people out there like a triple amputee, or somebody that had, I've seen a person before that he had a spinal cord injury and so didn't have use of his legs. And also before he had a spinal cord injury, he was in the military and he had an upper extremity amputation with an upper extremity prosthetic, which just had a hook on it. So he was in a manual chair. He only had one good arm. He only had one good extremity left to use. So that's how he propelled himself. He didn't want to use a power chair for some reason. He wanted to use a one-arm drive chair to stay strong and fit, I guess. And that's what he chose. This is a tilt and space chair, and you can tell that it's different than, let's learn a tilt and space before we learn what a recliner is, and then it makes more sense. So you can see that a tilt and space wheelchair is going to be for somebody that needs a lot more physical assistance. They usually are a lot more medically involved and can't really do as much for themselves. They're not as independent, physically at least. A tilt and space wheelchair can be the whole angle of the seat and the backrest can be tilted at different degrees um, in the back by some handles to prevent pressure sores. And that's how you get pressure reliefs, or tilt a person back and they can take a rest in their wheelchair during the day. Power chairs can have the tilt and space feature, and it's done by a button, or a manual tilt and space chair is done like by handlebars back on the push bars. Now, this is in contrast to a tilt and space chair. This is just a recliner chair. This is not as good as a tilt and space chair. This is probably what a tilt and space chair evolved from originally. But in this type of chair, it has a super high backrest, and you can recline the backrest, but the seat doesn't recline. So if you look at this lady in this picture that's tilted back, she looks okay now, but give her about 10 minutes and gravity is probably going to have her sliding forward in that chair and at risk of falling out. So I don't like reclining wheelchairs for really anybody. I mean, they're really not appropriate for anybody that needs them. I mean, if somebody needs to be in some kind of recliner or positioning chair, they need to be in a tilt and space chair, in my opinion. Now, recliner chairs, you won't see them that much anymore. Back when I worked at Tier, there were one or two that we had in the wheelchair pool, and we only brought them out when we were short on wheelchairs, but you might see them out there in some facilities, but hopefully you're not going to see them out there as much anymore. Sports chairs, these are really cool wheelchairs. Now, these chairs go super duper fast. So a sports wheelchair is lightweight, usually made out of titanium or aluminum, so it's super lightweight. It's easy, it's super lightweight, so it doesn't take a lot of energy to propel it. The frames are usually solid, so they're welded together. It's usually really low to the ground, and you can see that the wheels are angled in at the top, and we call that wheel camber. Camber is the word I just used, camber. And what that does is it widens the base of support of the chair, because the bottom of the wheels are wider, but the top of the wheels are closer in at their hips, so they don't have to reach out so far to propel. They save energy by keeping their hands closer at their sides to propel, so they can go faster. And the camber of the chair allows them to go faster too. So two things help them go faster in these chairs. Now, usually in these chairs, they have fixed footrests where their footrests are tied in place, and they usually have to wear like a 4-pronged pelvic belt, which is much wider than a seat belt. It kind of locks their whole pelvis in place. Because when these people are playing, if you've never seen real people playing wheelchair sports, then you need to look up on YouTube like wheelchair basketball or wheelchair rugby, because it gets pretty rough. I mean, they're running into each other at fast speed. They're flipping each other over in the air in their chairs. They're landing upside down with their wheelchairs on top of them, and they're still strapped in their chairs. And then they just, without getting unstrapped for the chairs, they don't stop the game. The referees keep the game going. The players just somehow are strong enough. They pop themselves back up on the upright with their arms and keep going and play. So basketball, they do that. Quad rugby is really rough. So look up quad rugby or wheelchair basketball on YouTube or on some site, and you'll see some really surprising things. It's really cool to watch how hard they play, how fast their chairs can go. We're getting a couple of rigid frame chairs donated to us that we just got. We had to buy them, but they were demos that we got from a vendor I know that are coming for delivery soon. They're not sports chairs, but they're rigid frame lightweight chairs that look a lot like these. Now these are custom power chairs. Now these are power chairs. Most of these are custom. You can tell they have thick cushions. You can see the purple one on the right hand side is kind of tilted. It has a really thick cushion. The one in the middle that's kind of got an orange base, it's a tilting space chair, and the leg rests also elevate. And then the one over here on the side that's turned sideways, it's completely upright at 90-90, but you can see there's something sticking out of the headrest. And I think I will tell you what that is, because I thought the next picture showed it. That's actually a straw that's called a sip and puff chair. And this person would not be, this would be a person that has no upper extremity movement left, but they drive their chair with their breath. So by a series of blowing through a straw or puffing through the straw. Sometimes the puffs have to be like 1 second, 2 second puffs. Sometimes you're inhaling to steer. Sometimes you're sucking for 1 second. Sometimes you're sucking for 2 seconds. Sometimes you puff for 1 second. Sometimes you puff for 2 seconds. Or it's really hard to learn how to drive a chair like that. I have a great uncle who has a spinal cord injury, and he drives a sip and puff chair. And I've only ever met him at family reunions, and I only ever saw him when I was a kid because he's kind of a distant relative. But he gets around, he even hunts, goes hunting. I mean, somebody has to hold the gun for him, obviously, but he goes outside off-roading with his sip and puff chair. And I don't know how he does it, but he's a good driver. There's other ways that you can drive. The most common way is with a joystick with your hands. And you can see those on most of the chairs in the pictures. Now, even if you don't have full use of your hands, even if you have just a few fingers that have a little bit of finger movement, or you have a little bit of hand movement left, you can have a positioning device placed to where your arm will be always positioned appropriately and maybe tied in place so that your hand will be always on the joystick, so that your arm doesn't fall off and then you're kind of just stuck. There's other ways you can drive a power chair which are really cool, and which I've driven these before with patients, and just to get it from their room to the hallway. And and then I've ran into walls myself and scratched up walls and stuff, but with a head array, and they drive their chair with their head. So they have a head, and this wheelchair in the center of the screen here that's tilted back, and it's got the orange base. That one is probably, I can see the joystick, but it's got a big enough headrest that it's probably a head-driven wheelchair too. So those types of wheelchairs usually have also supports, that little bars and pads that come up to their foreheads too, and they rest right above the forehead without touching it. So you drive through a series of, like, if you want to drive forward, you press your head backwards. If you want to stop, you let go. If you want to turn, you push the pad to the right. If you want to let go left, you push the pad to the left. If you want to tilt backwards and do a pressure relief, you do two quick tilts with your head, and then your whole chair tilts. So you have to learn different pressures of your head and different how to do it. But you can drive a power chair fully functionally and fully independently with just your head movements. It's really, really cool. Just to get off my soapbox with power chairs, there's also another way you can drive your power chair, is with, they put a sensor. It's almost like a retainer that you have to get a mouth guard made with your dentist, and then they put sensors on the top of the retainer, and then you wear the retainer in your mouth, and then you drive and it has certain buttons on there that you can feel with your tongue, and you actually drive the chair with your tongue, feeling the certain sensors. And so that's pretty cool and high tech. Now, the only drawback to that in the sip and puff methods are you can't talk while you're driving your chair. So that's the only downplay. But if that's the only way you can get around independently, I say go for it. If it gives you independence. We doing good? Any questions so far? Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
So the sip and puff chair,
Yes.
because I just pulled up a video and I was trying to understand it. So is it like different types of the way that they breathe out is how they
Yes.
move the chair?
There's so the program, it's all done, it's all computerized, but it's done with air pressure of the person blowing through the straw. So it's done through it's working through inhalations and exhalations, but it's all timed. So like how long your exhalations are and how long your inhalations are and how strong they are too. Like it's very I've I've seen some videos, and I have seen a lot of people don't use these anymore, just because of the fact that you can't talk while you're using them,
Right.
because you're always using your breath. But I have seen people training with these, and it's very tough. It's very tough because it's hard to learn how to breathe right to do that. But the people that get it and get good at it, I mean, once you try to give them a different way to do it, say, hey, you want to use a joystick, they don't want to do it any other way. They get stuck in their ways and they want to keep sip and puff forever. So it's kind of, once they learn it, they like it and they never want to do anything else.
Wasn't Stephen Hawkins in one of those chairs?
Was he? I think he was in sip and puff. Yes. No. Yeah, toward the end he was. Now he did have he had minor use of one hand. Like he had a lot of spasticity in his hand and tone and involuntary movements, but he could still do like some minor movements, and he kept a joystick for a while, but he eventually went, after he lost that, he went to a sip and puff. Yeah. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Good example. And I think Christopher Reeves, who was who was the best known celebrity that was a quadriplegic. I believe he used sip and puff, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he did.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did, because he didn't have upper extremity movement, if I'm not mistaken. So he used sip and puff.
I just pulled up a picture and it kind of looks like he has like two sensors on like the side of his neck, and it says it was a thought controlled wheelchair. So,
well, I guess when you're rich,
Hawkins or
I guess when you're Superman, you can afford to have wheelchairs like that. But right. I've never heard of that before. But I will say that I have heard of research going into computer brain interface for wheelchair functionality. So it is coming. Now there's a lot of stuff you can do with eye movements that like your iPhone watches, and your iPhone camera watches you and watches your facial movements and drives your chair. And there's Bluetooth and computer things that are already coming out like every year. It's the things that wheelchairs are doing with technology, but and they are trying to do brain interfaces, but I've never heard of a true something that had already come out. So I'm sure he was doing something that was in like the research stage, but you know, if you're a celebrity, I hate to say this about him, I'm not trying to say anything bad about Christopher Reeves. He was a great guy and he brought a lot of awareness to disabilities. But, you know, if you're a celebrity and you got the money, I mean, I would get something like that too and say, hey, look what I've got, look what I can do with it. Because in one way, it kind of shows that, hey, we have this out there. We need to make this available for everybody, not just the rich people. So, you know, it's a double-edged sword. I see it two ways, because I've just seen too many people that could have benefited from things like that and just didn't have insurance and just went home with only a recliner chair or a manual tilt and space chair, and they just couldn't afford a power chair. And you know, that just, but in their mind they were all there. They could have kept working, they could have finish their degree, but because of no insurance or funding, I mean, they just have their independence taken away. It's really, really sad. Really, really sad. It's not fun. So I am going to get off my soapbox on that.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
I have a question. How would you load a patient onto one of those wheelchairs if they are paralyzed from the neck down?
Wait, say it again. How would you what?
How would you put a patient into one of those wheelchairs if they were on the bed?
Oh, there's many ways. You'll learn there. You could do it manually. I mean, you will learn how to, believe me, you will learn how to move people around by the time you're done with this program. Like nothing. You will think moving somebody out of a bed into a wheelchair, even if they're paralyzed, it's easier than you think. But if they're truly paralyzed from the neck down, we usually use a mechanical or electric lift, and it's like a sling that goes around their body, and it just picks them up from the bed or from the chair, and it lowers them down, and you can position them, like pick them up from the bed and then put them in the chair like that. And it's relatively easy, but it's also if the person, but honestly, sometimes if the person is like, unless they're just are really like a lot bigger than me, I just do it manually because it's just easier and it takes less time to set up the mechanical or the electrical lift. And if they have any upper extremity movement or any trunk or any muscle left, I'm gonna just try to do it manually. So they try to engage those muscles to try to make them use those muscles, because if I don't make them use it, they may lose it and they may never get any better. So there's that too. So you kind of have to weigh all those options out, but it's also safety too. If they're really, really big and you're a small person, or if you don't have a tech with you and you don't think you can handle the person and their IV and their catheter safely, then you use a mechanical or electrical lift, no doubt. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason. It's just what's going to be the safest. Really, you go by safety, honestly, if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I did it once and it took 5 people.
Yeah. If it's a big enough person and if they are truly that paralyzed, then yeah, they're going to be dead weight and it will take a lot of people. But I mean, a lot of times if you learn the right body techniques, and it does, I mean, you can be a very, very, I mean, even the smallest of you that are like, I mean, I hate to pick on some of you, but some of you girls are petite and you're not, you weren't blessed vertically like some of the guys were. I haven't been blessed vertically sorry, I'm vertically challenged. I'm not very tall, but I have picked up and transported people like way over my height and weight. It's if you use the right body mechanics and the right leverage, you can do it. It's just you have to know how to be trained on it. But you'll learn that later on. So don't get scared of it right now. So, but good question. Probably other people were wondering that too. Let's look at seats and cushions. So you can see over here on the left side of the screen, we have a regular standardized, no bells and whistles manual chair. It's just a leather or vinyl sling seats and back, and it doesn't give any support. Then you see the one over with it looks like blue foam, looks like an egg crate cushion, like a mattress cover for the backrest and the cushion. That's just like a basic, if you have nothing else to give the patient for pressure relief, then you give them something like a foam cushion. Now, these other ones that are shown are specialized cushions. Let's look at this one below the blue cushion. It's a blue square surrounded by gray, and it's got the cover kind of pulled back. Now that blue in the middle is like a rubber well of gel, and it's a gel-like substance it's semi-solid. It's gel, and you sit on this. The cushion is made of foam and gel, and basically your ischial tuberosities and your sacrum and your thighs sit in this cushion of gel, and it basically helps prevent pressure sores and injuries so well, and it makes it so that you don't have to do, the person doesn't have to do pressure reliefs near as often. And if a person is very bony and susceptible to pressure reliefs, this can help them get them less often. Now, this other one, the black and gray one up there on the top, is just a foam cushion. Sometimes foam is enough. Now, this one down here on the in the picture with the black, it looks like black air cells on the red background. That's called a Roho cushion. Don't worry about the name of it. That's just the name of the company, the brand name. There's other air cushions out there that look just like this, but those are air cells that you blow up with a pump, and a person basically sits on an air cushion. Well, an air cushion, by design and by and research has shown this, these are the best types of cushions, air cushions, for preventing pressure sores on people. However, even though they are the best at preventing pressure sores, they're also the most unstable type of cushion to sit on. So think about this. You're a spinal cord injured patient, and let's say you're a paraplegic, and you're paralyzed from, let's say you're paralyzed from the chest down. So you've got full use of your arms, but your trunk doesn't have a lot of strength and you're real wobbly. So you're propelling this manual wheelchair because you've got use of your arms, where you're sitting on this air cushion, where you're bumping along as you're leaning back and forth and propelling. Well, your trunk is leaning everywhere, and your trunk doesn't have a lot of strength, so your trunk is kind of unstable. So, or if you're in a power chair and you're driving your power chair, even if, no matter how you drive it, if you're and you have an air cushion, you hit bumps, you're probably going to get thrown over to the side of your power chair because you don't have good trunk strength. So you have to weigh the options, whether, sometimes if a person needs a lot of pressure relief, but they have a really weak trunk and they need to be able to drive around their chair, they may go with a gel cushion anyway, and just know that they have to do pressure reliefs a lot more often than somebody else in order to be that independent. There are newer cushions that are coming out every year. Companies are making them new every year, just like any other model of car. There's cushions now that are like half gel, half air, that are combinations, and those tend to be a good compromise for some people. But there's just all different brands out there. You don't remember any of the brand names out there. Just know that there's foam, gel, and air cushions. Just like there's different kind of cushions, there's different kind of backrests. So you can see this first one is this first one on the left side of the screen is just a regular sling back rest. Doesn't provide any support. Just a basic chair is what we have in the lab for most of our chairs. Now, the rest of these backrests are custom backrests, and you can see that they're curved, and they're curved a little bit because they give the trunk a little bit more support. And this is like a true backrest that you would want if you're in a wheelchair. Whether you have trunk weakness or not, this gives you your trunk a little bit more support, so that you have more support while you're propelling or while you're moving across, the ground. And even if you're in a manual wheelchair, you need a custom back, because if you're going across a sidewalk or a driveway or uneven ground, you need something to hold your trunk in place. So you need a custom back. You can see that some of them, this one on the right side of the screen goes up really high. That would go up just under the neck. Some of them go down low, just under the lumbar spine. You can see this one on the bottom of the screen has these two little, they look like two little wings that fold out and go on the side of the trunk. Those are called lateral supports or lateral trunk supports, or you'll just hear us call them laterals. We'll just say, instead of saying lateral trunk supports or lateral pelvic supports, because you can have those by the pelvis too, or lateral knee supports. We usually just say laterals for support. I mean, laterals are just assume everybody knows what we're talking about. So if you hear us say that we're talking about wheelchairs, just know we mean supports for the side. Those are what those look like, and those can be with a button. Those fold away quickly for transfers, and you can have those at the trunk. They're usually seen at the trunk. Sometimes you also have them down at the hips and the pelvis and at the knees too. Armrests, most armrests are removable. Very few are welded in place. They need to be removable so you can do transfers and get your patient out of them. You can see this this chair on the right side of your screen that looks like a tubular armchair. Armrest looks like a tube. That's like in a lightweight, more independent type of rigid frame manual wheelchair, and those can be either picked up and just taken off the wheelchair, or they can be folded away and they can fold back a little bit too. Or other wheelchairs will have them where they'll be in a slot and you just pick them up, or you just hit a button and you click them up, take them off when you want to transfer out of the chair, and when you're ready you just put them back on and they click into place. So there's different types depending on the brand of the chair and the type of patient you are. There's different kind of leg rests. So you can see these are really the most type of supportive leg rests. These have something to support the back of your leg, a calf pad. So your legs have support. They have folding foot plates. Some will have not a calf pad, but they will have a heel loop. So instead of the calf pad to prevent your leg from falling out of the off the leg rest, they'll have a heel loop that'll go across the bottom, the back of your shoe or the back of your ankle. Now, if you look in the middle of the screen, you see these completely different kind of foot plates. These are called fixed foot rests. Okay, these are not removable. These are going to be on most spinal cord injury people tend to have chairs with fixed and non-removable leg rests, because they tend to transfer with their feet on those leg rests for stability and safety. And they don't want to remove their leg rest, and they need to keep their legs in place at all times. And they don't, so they keep their leg rest usually on something like that. Usually more independent people in more independent type of chairs will have solid leg rests that don't come off. But in most types of chairs, they can swing away and come off the chair completely. In some of them, they can elevate so that you can sit in the chair with a leg elevated. And power chairs, they can also come off of power chairs. And some power chairs have power elevating the leg rest, where you can just hit a button and your leg rest elevate too. So if you have like some swelling in your ankles, you could do a tilt. You could tilt your whole chair back, so you're tilted back upside down, and elevate your leg rest, get rid of all that swelling. Wheelchair training, wheelchair propulsion, it's always, that's going to be based on, are they going to be propelling with their hands manually? Are they going to be propelling power? How are they going to, if it's going to be power, how are they going to propel it with power? What kind of system? And then what, kind of body systems do they need to use if it's power? And then if they're doing a manual wheelchair, they really need to learn how to do a wheelie and and you might think that's strange, but they need to be able to do a wheelie, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And they need to be able to hold the wheelie on the back two wheels for at least 10 seconds without falling forward or backward. And they need to be able to go up and down a curb in their wheelchair by themselves, either without anybody helping them or with minor help. So we teach them to do these things. Now might ask me, why would a person need to be able to do a wheelie and hold it by themselves? That seems mean and just like a trick they could learn to do. Well, a lot of spinal cord people in manual wheelchairs, they're going to learn to do a wheelie anyway, just because they think it's cool and they want to do it anyway. So they're all going to teach themselves to do it probably. So, but it honestly, it does build a lot of trunk strength. So if you can help them actually try to do a wheelie and train them to do it, you're working on a lot of core stability with them. So any core muscles they have left, we can strengthen and actually help them become more functional in other things through working on their wheelies. Getting up and down a curb, well, if you're independent and you're a paraplegic and you go to the mall and you got to get up a curb to get into the elevator or up to the front door, well, you got to be able to hold a wheelie to get your front wheels over the curb so you can pop your back wheels up if you're all by yourself. And most paraplegics know how to do that, and they do it in the blink of an eye. If you blink, you'd miss them. You don't even know how they did it. They did it so fast. Or how to tell a person, if you're in a wheelchair, manual chair, how to tell a person. You need to be able to instruct a caregiver or somebody that's new or a family member how to get you in your wheelchair up and down a curb. Not very hard to do if you do it the right way. Pretty simple to do. So that's all on wheelchairs and wheelchair different types, backrest, cushions, wheelchair training. I gave y'all the basics. Like I said, within the next couple weeks, we're expecting the delivery of we're getting 2 rigid frame chairs, and they're going to have some custom seating systems that are going to be put on them. So, and the frames and the wheels are demos that were just demos for people to try out. They never even were on. But the custom seating, cushion, and the backs and the armrests are brand new. So we're getting all of that to have our lab. So y'all get to see those pretty soon. So that'll be exciting. You get to see different types of chairs. You'll probably I want you to pick, when we get those, I want you to pick them up, pick it up, feel how heavy it is, and then try picking up one of our other black folding frame wheelchairs. You'll appreciate the difference that people have if they've got to propel those wheelchairs manually. They like the lightweight chairs because it takes so much less energy out of their day, and they can get through their whole day propelling a lightweight chair. So, any questions on wheelchairs before we move on to gait training? There's a lot to learn on wheelchairs. Some therapists specialize in wheelchairs, and all they do all day is do wheelchair prescriptions in clinics. Before anybody, like I said, before anybody gets a custom wheelchair, they've got to be measured and have custom wheelchair trials. So a therapist and some kind of equipment vendor is going to be involved in that anyway. So some of you may go into that one day. I have a little experience in wheelchair evaluations with power stuff just when I worked at TIER, and I really thought it was interesting. Not something I'd want to do all the time, but it was kind of fun. Something different to have in your toolbox. Okay, so we'll switch gears completely now. So we'll switch gears from wheelchairs and talk about gait training. So gait, G-A-I-T, not G-A-T-E, is walking. Gait is your walking pattern. It's the person's method of walking, and you have to take into account the person's movement, if it's coordinated, if it's symmetrical, if there's any circular movements, if it's progressive, and I'll talk about what progressive gait means in a minute. Those types of things we're looking at. So we're not just looking at if a person can get themselves from point A to point B, no matter what it takes for them to get there, but the quality of their movement too. We want to work. We're not just helping people hobble around we're helping people regain the quality of their gait after something happens to them. So just to divide gait into two, we have gait is divided into two phases or cycles: stance phase and swing phase. Well, as you probably can guess it, stance phase is when a leg is in contact with the ground. And swing phase is when a leg is not touching the ground, when it's swinging through the air. Well, we're always standing well, I won't say always, for about 99, 98% of the time when we're walking, we're always standing on one foot. We're always standing with one foot in stance phase and one foot in swing phase. And then very in a blink of an eye, we switch. And then the feet switch, and then all of a sudden they're vice versa. The other one's in stance and the other one's in swing. Stance is about 60% of our gait cycle. Swing phase is about 40% of the gait cycle. Okay, these are just different. This is just different types, or I'm sorry, breaking down the stance cycle and the swing cycle to different components. I will teach you the components in much more detail next semester in Intro to Kinesiology, but we might as well talk about it a little bit now. So the stance cycle, remember, is when your foot is touching the ground. So the stance cycle starts with what we call heel strike. So when you're walking, when you swing your foot forward, and then the first thing that, if you're walking and you have a normal gait, and all of us in this classroom, I'm sure do, our heel is the first thing that hits the ground normally. We don't even know it. And then after that, our foot kind of slaps the ground. And then we quickly move into what we call mid stance, when we're standing basically with our body over one leg, and we're standing on one leg and our foot is flat and our knee is straight. Then our heel starts to come off the ground like we're standing on our toes. When that's happening, we're swinging the other leg forward at the same time. And then going back to stance, we have toe off. That's when the toes push off and propel us forward. And then we move into the swing phase of that same leg. And then we're accelerating it forward, swinging it forward, and then slowing it down before it goes into heel strike again. So you can always, both of these cycles, I know I confused you, and don't let this confuse you. Both of these cycles are going on both at different legs at the exact same time, but they switch back and forth so fast on each other. You got to be very fast in order to analyze somebody's gait. So the way we teach gait analysis is to watch one leg at a time. You watch a person's gait from one side laterally, then you watch it from the other side. Maybe if they're walking on a treadmill or a walkway, or you video them walking, then you watch them from the front and the back. You're going to see different things from all 4 different views, and you'll see things at different cycles, all different things in all different cycles. And so you'll get good at this next semester, and you'll be really good at this in 3rd semester. So what I would say, this is just a little bit of a confusing drawing, that just kind of a stick drawing that's comes out of one of your that came out of one of your old books. What I would tell you to do is, if you want to understand this a little bit more, and I would very much encourage all of you to YouTube gait analysis or gait training or gait labs, and just look and see, just get an introduction to it from a lab or a therapist that does this all day, because there's some places that they do gait analysis with computer and with infrared and with all kinds of cool stuff, where they have the person's a gait completely analyzed on computer, and then they never even have to, they only have the person walk 10 feet one time, and they can watch their video and their computer analysis 20 times and then figure out the problem and make the plan of care from that. Or the computer makes the plan of care after they watch it. So it's kind of cool. So look at those new things, because there's a lot of cool things coming out in gait analysis, a lot of automated tools that are helping us. And AI is getting big in this. Gait training, the action of walking or moving, that's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, assistive devices for walking. Everybody knows what canes are. So you've got a single point cane. That's the kind that's only got 1 point. You've also got a quad cane. That's the point. That's the cane that can stand up by itself. That has 4 prongs. I think those are evil, and I don't like them, and I have a bias against them. And one day I will tell you why. For now, just know that Miss King and Mr. Allen hate quad canes, and we better not ever see you using one, or we will go off on you. Quad canes are not as bad as what's next on the screen, on the right side of the screen. That's called a hemi walker. So if you don't remember what it looks kind of like a regular walker, but it's cut in half, and you only hold on to that on one side of your body. I also think those are evil. Quad canes and hemi walkers, they're made with good intentions to give somebody a lot of support, but over time they cause a lot more problems in gait and compensations that are like, basically you can't teach somebody out of those problems. So my training in my school of thought, where I came from, was to never give anybody those devices in the first place, because you're just teaching them how to walk wrong if you give them those devices. But I won't say that I'll never use those, because there is a time and a place for those. So there are times when those are available, and we do have them in our lab to see, but you just get better quality training if you use something like a quad, like a regular single point cane, or even like a walking pole or a walking stick, like a hiking pole. We used to do a lot of our gait training with long dowel rods that were like literally 6 foot long wooden dowel rods from Home Depot. And we would put, that were just makeshift walking sticks. We would take duct tape around them to be the hand grip. And that's what we did our gait training with. So that, and if you think about it, if you hold on to a walking stick, and you're holding on to it up here, it makes you keep a good posture and you stand upright the way you should walk. If you're holding on to a quad cane or a hemi walker, it encourages you to put all your weight on those assistive devices. So you're not only leaning forward, you're leaning over to the side too. And that's a bad way to start learning how to walk again. So that's why I don't like them. But like I said, if that's all that's available to you in the facility or at the time, or if that's what the patient comes with, or if you're working home health and that's, you walk in and that's what they're using, then yeah, maybe you can make it in the back of your mind a sneaky goal of yours to get them to something else. But don't just walk in and say, oh, stop using this. Maybe you can work toward that goal if it's appropriate. Crutches, probably every one of us or most of us have been on these axillary crutches before. Axillary crutches are just the crutches that we are used to seeing, that go up under your armpits, and then you've got the hand grips, and they change height based on just the legs and the arm, the hand grips. We have all crutches of all sizes, all shapes, tons of pairs of crutches in our lab, and they're called axillary crutches, the full name, because they go up under your armpit, and your armpit is called the axilla, or the axillary region. The other type of crutches are called forearm crutches, or loft strand crutches. same name. They're named after somebody named Lofstrand who invented it, but we commonly call them forearm crutches. These are the kind of crutches you see maybe like adults with CP or kids with CP that may be walking. You can see that they have a cuff, like a metal or a plastic cuff that goes around the forearm, and then a part to lean on the hands. Well, the cuffs are there on their forearms because they need a cane to walk, but then they can't really let go of their cane very often. But when they do let go of their cane, say if they're at work, or let go of their cane to pick a book up, or let go of the cane to do something at work or school, then their cane doesn't drop to the floor. It stays kind of hooked to their arm and hangs there, so they're never away from it. So I had an adult patient once that I guess I don't remember his name, but this is when I was working an outpatient, and he went to U of H, and he was 22 or 23, and he had CP, and he was using actually a posterior walker. I don't know that I'm going to even have a picture of that yet, but that's more of a walker that kids use, but it was a big one. Well, it's not really the most effective way for an adult to get around, especially on a college campus, especially when you got to get around U of H, like he was trying to get around on it. And he was breaking those, he was going through a walker every 6 months because U of H campus was just so hard on his equipment. Well, I trained him on Lofstrand crutches, and it totally improved his independence because he didn't have to worry. He wasn't leaning back on a posterior walker. He was able to walk better with Lofstrand crutches, and they were always attached to him. He could reach up for a bookshelf. He could carry his backpack, and he could swing his backpack on and off his shoulders without his crutches falling to the floor. So they worked really good for him. You'll see a lot of spinal cord injury and CP, like maybe kids with CP and adults with CP using these kind of crutches more, or people that are older and have polio or post-polio syndrome, they may have Lofstrand crutches, but not seeing that often. But very, very do have a place. Axillary crutches are usually almost always used for short term. Walkers, we've all seen different types of walkers. These are the most, besides parallel bars in the gym, a walker is the most stable the most stable gait training device for a person to use in the home and the community. There's standard walkers that just are 4 legs. There's rolling walkers that have 2 legs in the front, like you can see in the little one in the bottom picture, has 2 wheels and then 2 legs in the back. Or you might see a walker sometimes that has tennis balls on the wheels, and that just makes it slide easier. Oops, mine got cut out. I think somebody got cut out. Oh well. Then you have rolling walker, which has 2 wheels. All these can be folded up, so you can transfer them easy. They're very lightweight. And then you've got the granddaddy walker. You've got it's called a rollator. And that's the one over here with the big 4 wheels, the basket, and the seat on it. Now, those are used a lot for people that are big. They're still ambulatory in the community. Maybe they like to go walk. Maybe they like to go on long walks in their neighborhood, or maybe they live in a SNF or a nursing home, but they're still ambulatory. They're not in a wheelchair, but they just need a little bit of help. Well, this will be their main means of mobility. You can get around a lot faster with a rollator than a rolling walker. And when you want to stop and take a break, it's got brakes on it, or locks that you can lock, and then you can turn around and it's got a seat on it and you can sit down. Some of them come with a tray or cup holders where you can keep your bottle of water or adult beverage of choice with you as you're walking around. I've seen people, I saw somebody on the Vegas Strip pushing around a rollator one time. So people of all ages, you go to Vegas and use their rollators too. They got a basket in it, so you can put anything you want to in there. Sometimes the baskets are under the seat, sometimes they're separate like this one is, but they're always going to have a seat on them and a place to rest. The rollators really allow people to have a lot more independence in the community, and they're really good. But don't think that a rollator is better than a rolling walker, because just a regular rolling walker with 2 wheels is much sturdier and safer than a rollator. So if you have somebody that's just learning to walk, or they can walk and they're real shaky, or they have to have somebody with them for balance, don't give them a rollator, because they're going to be gone on the floor. Those wheels are going to just roll out from under them. I would give them a rolling walker with 2 wheels, because it's slower to use. You have to push it. It's harder to use, and it's better for people that have to take it slower.
I have a question.
Okay.
So those little cords on the side of the rollator, are those like
Uh-huh.
hand brakes or?
Those are the locks. Yes.
Oh, the locks.
They lock the wheels. They're not, well, and they look just like what you see on bicycles, honestly. They're not, but don't think of them as brakes, because it's not like if they get going too fast, they can press on them and it slows them down. It doesn't work like that. They have to push them, and it just goes it's either locked or unlocked. But those wires go to the brakes, to the wheels, just like a bike does.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Parallel bars, the most stable type of assistive device, usually screwed down into the floor or a large wooden platform, a metal platform. They're the safest place to start gait training, but not necessarily, it doesn't have to be the only place that you always start gait training, because some people don't need that much stability, or some people that are younger may be more apt to start on something like a walker, or like with a walking stick, or with maybe 2 walking sticks, because they're younger and maybe more braver, or maybe they're more functional, or maybe they're more motivated to get back to their job, or get back to school, or get back to raising their kids, or to get back home, and they don't want it to go slow. They want to get going. So if they want to do that, there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes there's some people where, even if they're young, it just depends on their diagnosis and other comorbidities. You got to take it slow with some people. Amputees, especially, like with this guy, the best place to start off with amputees, in my opinion, and many of the opinions of the amputee gurus out there, is to start in the parallel bars, because you've got to learn a lot of self-awareness of weight shifting and a new center of gravity, and it's really that's a whole new ball game if you go on amputees. Pretty fun though. We'll learn a lot about that later on. Balance, you have, and again, in the parallel bars, just more things you do for gait training. Weight shifting side to side, forward and backward, stepping forward and back while you practice weight shifting. What weight shifting is, if you don't know what that is, try stand up after, well, not right now, because I want you to listen to me, but after lecture, stand up and then take 1 step forward, and then just stop. When you take a step forward, every time you take a step forward with one leg, you're shifting 100% of your body weight onto the other leg. So during that stance phase we talked about, you're standing on one leg with 100% of your weight on one leg, but it only lasts for a few seconds. So we're constantly shifting weight. Well, if you try to start teaching somebody to walk again and you skip weight shifting, it's never going to work. So weight shifting is like day one, gait training 101. Standing push-ups on the bars where you're doing squats while you're holding on to the bars is just good for upper extremity strength, because the upper extremities are having to hold them up on the bars, but it's good for their really good strength through their legs too. And you wouldn't think about this, but parallel bars are usually only about 10 feet long. So once you walk to one end of them, you got to turn around. And that's a whole different ball game right there, because then the person's got to let go with one hand, rotate their trunk, hold on with both hands to the same bar, then start doing weight shift and moving their feet. Maybe they can't do that. Maybe the therapist has to do all that for them, or maybe they're in braces and we have to do it all for them. It doesn't matter, but turning around can be hard. But we can't forget, no matter how advanced somebody is in gait, we got to teach turning and walking backwards, because we don't just walk in a straight line all day, if you think about it. So we start all gait training sequence. What's it look like? Just in a nutshell, parallel bars we talked about. Then you're always going to train somebody on level floors, like inside on tile, concrete floors, wood floors. You wouldn't want to start off on carpet, because carpet is actually a lot harder to walk on. And it's actually a little bit harder to balance on too. Now, for those of us that have nothing wrong with us, we can't understand that. But if there's anything wrong if you've had any kind of thing wrong that's giving you gait problems or strength problems, carpet is going to be a big barrier to ambulation. Rugs and carpet make you trip, and it's really, really hard to work on those. So start off on level, hard surfaces. Then move to unlevel surfaces like sidewalks outside, because no sidewalk is completely level, especially in Houston where they're all messed up by the tree roots. Ramps. I've walked in parking garages with people doing gait training. Now, obviously, they have to get to that point where they can walk up a parking garage, but I've done that. Opening doors. Don't let them get used to always hitting the handicap button or relying on an automatic door. If they have it's harder than you think to walk up to a door with an assistive device, even a glass door, and push it or pull it, and with one hand while you're holding onto this assistive device and balancing at the same time. So we have to train your patients to do that. Harder than you think. Passing people in the hallway. We think nothing of that. We just think we don't even think of it. But if they're walking and they need to get past somebody to get around them, if somebody's in the grocery store and they're walking and they're standing there on a shelf and this person has to get around them, well, they have to know how to stop walking in a straight line and walk in a semicircle to get around them. Fall techniques. It's inevitable. If you have something that puts you at a fall risk or at a gait, something that puts you at a reason to have gait training, sometime in your life, you're going to fall. Hopefully it's not ever going to be during therapy, but at home one day, in the community one day, it might only be one time, or we just need to tell our patients it's inevitable. It's going to happen one day. It's just going to happen. You can't get away from it. Happens to the best of us, happens to everybody. So we have to teach people how to fall safely. And there are certain ways that we can teach people how to fall from standing. There's ways that people feel like they're sliding out of their wheelchair, how we can teach them how to fall correctly without getting hurt. Things like that. We'll talk about those later semesters. And then outdoor ambulation, like I mentioned, uneven sidewalks. Walking on grass is really hard. If you think walking on carpet is hard for some people, walking on grass is really hard for people. It trips them up. The grass, basically, even short grass, swallows their feet up, and they can't pick their feet up out of the grass. They can't pick up their feet high enough to clear the grass. If they're using a device, they can't push their device through the grass. So it's really hard. So you have to think about things like that. And also think about where they're going after they leave you. Are they going back home to live where, are they going back home to where they live in the country, to where most of their land is, most of their yard and driveway is dirt or just level dirt or gravel? Well, they've got to be able to propel over that or walk over that, walk or get a wheelchair through that. So you got to train them. You got to train them for that. Steps, just another part of it, goes without saying. Obviously, ascending and descending stairs with assistive devices can be challenging. You can get upstairs with a single point cane, and you can actually go upstairs with crutches, but that's about it. Now, there are some old books out there, and I won't tell you when I graduated PT school, but one of my texts had this old black and white picture in it that showed how to train a person to fold up a rolling walker and uses it as an assisting device to go up a set of stairs. Now, that's about the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. I think that's, if a person has to have that much help to use a walker, they do not need to be going upstairs by themselves, and they certainly don't need to be hauling up a walker too at the same time. That's so dangerous. So you can do it with a cane, or you can do it with even bilateral crutches, but that's about it. But we'll learn how to do that in third semester. Doesn't it sounds like it's hard? Piece of cake. Once you learn how to do it, you'll never forget it. Okay, almost done, guys. This is one of the biggest slides, and saved it for last. Weight bearing statuses. Okay, so what is a weight bearing status? Well, a weight bearing status basically means this is going to be more so in the ortho field, or when ortho injuries occur. So a weight bearing status means how much weight or body weight or pressure can I put through this limb? It's not only for your legs, it's for your arms too. We bear weight through our arms all day. Our arms are weight bearing limbs just like our legs. We just don't do it as much. We don't think about it as much. But the weight bearing status is usually if we've had a fracture, if they've had and we need it to, and that we need that fracture to heal, if we've had surgery and we need the hardware, the bone to heal around the hardware, or if moving for a little while or putting weight through it would slow down the healing process, we're going to be given a weight bearing status. Well, the weight bearing status can only be determined by the doctor. Now, this says MD. It can be, if it was the doctor was a DO, a doctor of osteopath, it would be determined by them too. Just physician is what I mean. A PT or PTA cannot change a weight bearing status. We have to go by what the doctor says. So let's start at the top and go down to full. So non-weight bearing, NWB, is how you write it. No weight on that leg. So usually if it's a non-weight bearing extremity, it's going to be like a non-weight bearing lower extremity after ACL reconstruction. So you'll probably be on crutches for weeks, and you'll be non-weight bearing for 4 to 6 weeks. I'm not an ACL guy, so I don't remember the protocol, but it would be something like that. You would not be able to put any weight on that leg at all. Then let's use the same ACL reconstruction example. Then after you heal a little while, then the doctor will move you into partial weight bearing. Now, partial weight bearing, it doesn't really tell you a lot, because that could be, what exactly does that mean? Does that mean 50% of my weight? Does that mean 75% of my weight? Does that mean 25% of my weight? I mean, that's a very subjective weight bearing status. So we try not to use that as much anymore, because it can mean different things to every single person. We do try to say these things though: touchdown weight bearing or foot flat weight bearing. TTWB or FFWB. And these are the way you will see it written. Nobody ever writes it out loud. So toe touch, these are types of partial weight bearing, but it does give us as the therapist a little bit more of an objective say so in how much weight the person is putting through the extremity. So if we say, if it's lower extremity and they've been moved to toe touch weight bearing, they're walking with crutches or a walker, we can tell them when you're walking, you can put just your toes on the floor, just enough for balance, but that's all the weight you can put through it. But you can rest your foot on the floor when your foot gets tired, and you can use it during gait for balance, but that's it. The other partial is foot flat. So instead of having your toes on the floor, you can put your whole foot flat on the floor for weight bearing for just balance, or to rest your foot, but no weight is going through it. So we'll tell our patients, you can still put this part of your foot on the floor, but pretend there's an egg under your foot and you don't want the egg to be cracked while you're walking. Then the next stage up is weight bearing is tolerated, abbreviated WBAT, WBAT. That means, yeah, there's still some healing going on. They're not completely healed, but weight bearing is now good for the healing process. We need more weight bearing. So we want the person, even if they're going through a little bit of pain, we want them to put as much weight through that limb as pain lets them tolerate. So even if it's this uncomfortable, they can still do it within their pain tolerance. That's what it means. So if the pain is not tolerable, no, we don't want you to work. You're not expected to work through that, because then you're going to be doing some damage. But if it's just sore, if it's uncomfortable, then yeah, you can work through that. So an example of that would be usually total hip replacements, no matter what kind they use, are usually weight bearing is tolerated day one after surgery, and they want them up standing with a walker and walking and putting his full weight through that new hip the next day. People are not happy when they're doing, patients are not happy at all when they're doing that, but that's what the doctor wants. So that's what is done on the first few days of therapy, because that's what gets that hip healing around that metal prosthetic better. And full weight bearing is just complete 100% weight bearing. Same thing as weight bearing is tolerated. It's just there's no pain involved. Or full weight bearing with it would be full weight bearing with no restrictions or something like that. Remember, you just go through these, remember the abbreviations, because the abbreviations and the meaning will be on your test. But one big thing you need to remember, the PT, even your supervisor, cannot change the weight bearing status. Only the doctor can do that. Any physician can do that. Okay, and this is the last slide, and we won't read through it. These are levels of independence that we use in therapy in our documentation. And we don't only use these as in our documentation, but we use these in our verbal talking to each other as therapists and to our patients. And we use these when we talk to other clinicians and insurance people, because in the rehab world, all rehab people, no matter what their discipline is, we all use this exact same scale of assistance or independence. Even for cognitive scales, speech and psychologists use this exact same scale. It doesn't matter your discipline. The same scale means the same. It goes. Whoop, my earbud fell out. Sorry, my ear pod fell off. It was probably loud for y'all. We go by the same assistance scale. So in our case, independent means we're all independent in our class, unless you have a physical disability that I just don't know about. If you don't have a physical disability and you don't need a device and you walk around with appropriate speed and you have good balance, then you're independent. If you're modified independent, that means you're still independent in everything in your daily life, except you use an assistive device, or you need a little bit of extra time with it. So if you're a person, like many students that come through any school, any program, our program, we always have students like this. I don't know if this is a good example, but if you have a reason that you have a good reason that you need extra test taking time, you just need what, time and a half to finish the test. You're still finishing the same test. You're still expected to know the same information. You just have a few minutes extra left to take it. That's modified independent. If you are modified independent with your wheelchair transfers, that means, yes, you can get yourself out in and out of your wheelchair to your car, to the toilet, to your bed, to the floor, and get back up again to any surface. And you can do it all by yourself, but you just need 5 minutes to do it or 10 minutes to do it, but you can do it all by yourself. Supervision means you can still do it all by yourself, but you need somebody there to set up the situation for you. So maybe you need somebody to put the wheelchair right next to your bed and lock the brakes for you before you transfer because you can't do it by yourself. Or you need somebody to set up your meal in front of you, and then you can eat it, but you couldn't cook it. So you need somebody to set your meal up for you and put it in front of you so that you can eat it. Standby assist really means the same thing as supervision. Contact guard assist really means the same thing as min assist. And I'll just define contact guard assist first. If you have to have a hand on the patient for it, if you just have to lay a finger on them for balance, if you're working on balance or gait training and you just cannot take your hand off of them yet because they will go, or you just don't trust them yet, that's contact guard assist. But Medicare, in the Medicare world, there's no such thing as contact guard assist. That's considered min assist. So if you have your hand on a person, that's considered min assist. But min assist truly means that the patient is doing 75% of the work, physically or cognitively, and we are doing the other 25%. Moderate assist or moderate assistance means the patient is doing 50% of the work and we're doing the other 50%. Maximal assistance means the patient is able to do 25% of the work and we do the other 75%. And total assist or dependent assist means that maybe the person could help, but it's less than 25% of the work. So that means that we do more than 75% of the work. That's total assistance. Now this is considered the same scale for wheelchair transfers, for self-feeding, for doing memory tests, for doing cognitive tests, for being able for gait training with certain devices. And our hope is that in every situation, no matter where our patient is, when we start in this scale, when we start with them, every patient that we pick up, no matter what type of patient we're seeing and what kind of setting, they're going to be somewhere with their problem in this scale. And our goal is to go up in the scale. Even if we don't get to mod independent or independent, at least go further up in the scale so that they do become more independent on their own. That's what's important. Whoa, I talked a long time. Sorry about that. I just get so excited. I don't even know what I'm doing. So any questions about anything I said for those of you that have not zoned out already? Pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so if you want to, as far as the assistive devices go, Well, let's talk about Wednesday first. In lab, this will be our first day that we're going to do the skill check-offs for some of y'all for positioning and draping. So the ones of you that are already signed up, you'll go on Wednesday after A&P, your A&P portion is done, and you'll either check off with me or Dr. D. We're both doing it. And you'll just draw from basically a set of scenarios. You'll get 2 positionings and 2 drapings to do out of all of those that we went through. Okay, so you'll do 4 things, but two of each. And it'll say something like your patient needs ultrasound to the right shoulder, drape them for this, and then you would tell your patient to get in a gown, and then you would set them up with their gown, and then you would do the sheet over them and make the toga, pull their arm out, and then have their shoulder exposed, wrap the sheet up under them so that only their arm is exposed, and then the shoulder's exposed. And then that would be how you pass that draping comp. That's all there is to it. Remember, you got to wash your hands. Do the universal symbol for washing your hands. Introduce yourself, your name and date. Get your patient's name and date of birth, and tell them what you're there to do. And you don't have to redo that introduction before each thing you do. We're just going to pretend that it's all the same day and you're going into the same patient's room each time. So you can just start off each time saying like, oh, hey, so-and-so, it's me again, here to do something different. If you didn't sign up on the list, if the list filled up, if you want to stay after lab is over, if you're in the second lab and you want to just go after lab, I can do a couple check-offs after that if you want to do that. If you want to spend any time on Wednesday that you're there on campus talking to me about your paper, if you have something done or a draft and you want to show it to me between now and then, I'm not going to tell you, yes, I'll take this, or no, this is wrong. I'll give you tips, or I'll let you know if you're on the right track or not. You can email that to me between now and Wednesday, or just show me something in print that you've got on Wednesday in person, and I'll just let you know, yeah, beef up this a little bit, you're on the right track, or no, you're totally going off on the left field, let's reel it in and start over. I'll help you with that. So I'm not going to tell you how to do it because the rubric is there for you and we went through it, but I'll help you with it. So, and everybody got their hand washing skill comp checked, so that was good. Nobody failed. Got one out of the way. Okay, if no questions, then you are free to go.